Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab, and if you are new and visiting our channel for the first time, this is something I do with my husband Chris. So on our channel, we take thrift store found items and we give them new life. And sometimes we are blessed to have a viewer that was so gracious to she's here locally, about 2 hours away from me, and we went and picked up quite a haul from her. Bless Kelly's heart, and rave reviews, and yes, she read all your kind compliments and comments, guys. So thank you for being so kind. So in today's video, I am showing you some of the quick flips. At first I started working on them and I'm like, you know what? I think that maybe you all wanted to see what I was going to do to some of the quicker flips. So I started filming, slowing myself down. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video. And Kelly, I hope I did your items justice. I just thought right here, I wanted to share one of Kelly's pieces that she gave me. She'd given me this beautiful galvanized gather sign, and I ended up gluing it onto one of the pallet frames that I had in my hoard that had not made its way into a booth, or I got a wreath on it. So look at that, it turned out perfect.
So yes, I just used some of our Starbond CA glue and the accelerator to glue this on. I couldn't get a nail to really go through, and I didn't want you to see any of the nails taken away from that beautiful galvanized, but boy, does it really show off this pallet wood. That galvanized has that aged look to it that I just absolutely thought went with this pallet wood. So I know this will surprise you all, but I absolutely love the way that this mirror is painted. It's got that bevel that's true to my heart. It is painted very nice, and I love that gold accent. So it just needs a little cleaning on the front, and the back's where it really needs the work. The back is unfortunately a little bit on the raw side. So after making sure that that mirror was good and attached, I didn't have to do anything to it. You can see all the tabbies are there. There's nothing wrong with that mirror part. I just want to make this back look finished. So this is a pretty easy fix for us anyway, that we already always have this brown paper that we put on the top of our workshop tables, and you can also buy those rolls from the Dollar Tree store also. This just makes that nice finished back. So a little bit of hot glue, glue that right on, and like I said, this paper is a little bit thicker than what you'd buy at the Dollar Tree store, so I don't really feel it on my hands. Just a bead of glue, and then I'll just cut off the excess going around that entire frame. Now my next up is to put a hanging system, and we just get these eyelet tabs off of Amazon in a pack of, I can't remember how many, but it's a large pack and it's very cost efficient. So when you're hanging up an item, you really have to kind of feel the weight. So when it comes to a mirror like this that's a little bit heavier, we want to make sure that we're putting these eyelets and then the heavy wire to make sure that it will hold it. This isn't one of those projects that you just put one of those hammer in kind of tabs at the top of it. You want something to support the weight of the item that you are hanging. And then when it comes to a mirror, that you can do two different ways. As you see, I'm going to be crisscrossing. I'm going to be doing one vertically and one horizontally, so that when the buyer may want or have the space to hang it two different ways, that way we give the buyer an option. It's a minimal in a flipping cost to do that. It just opens up the buyers a little bit more when they're like, oh, well, I only had this place. Oh, look, I can use it this, even though they can change it. A lot of people want to have it as is when they're buying it. And then just to show you what the wire is that we use, I think it's a fencing wire that, yep, we did order off of Amazon. I tried to link it, but I think it's out of stock right now. But you definitely want to just look for the gauge of wire. The heavier the gauge. I think this is a 17 gauge, and after Chris watches the video, he may correct me if I was wrong. And we like to, after we loop it, to clamp it definitely towards the very top of the eyelet, and then just make sure that the excess, if there's too much, I might cut it off, but the rest of it, I usually just swirl it around, just giving that nice security that you know that somebody's mirror is not going to fall off their wall. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup. I got a Clorox wipe here, and then going to do some Norwex cloths to make it streak free. But just trying to get in those grooves, probably from her sitting around and me sitting around, it has collected some of that dirt. But don't you just love how that gold and that red goes together? I know you're all surprised by that, but I do like it. Now, I can't say that I've ever done a screen before, but there was just something about, this is that metal screen. It has that aged patina of the rust, which is great for a screen, but not for something you're eating off of. But I definitely love the age of it. Now, for me, I want to take the shiny down just a little bit on the paint job and make it into that white. But I thought, oh my gosh, I have one of these dollar spot from Target, $3 Bangalore wreaths left, along with a welcome galvanized piece of metal from the Dollar Tree store. So can't you just envision this? I just taped off the screen. I'm not going to really do any sanding. There's not any chippiness coming off that I need to. I just made sure that I went in with a Clorox wipe and just made sure that I cleaned it really well and let it dry before painting it. Now I'm just going to go in with my Kills Paint and Primer in 1, the ready to use right off the shelf from Walmart, and just give this a couple coats. And then after those coats are dry, I'm just going to go in with my BLACK+DECKER sander with some 220 sandpaper on it. And then I'm just going to go along those edges, just give them that slight distress. Just there's a little bit of detail on the inside of this screen that I really want to make to pop. This is just going to tie this piece in a little bit more and give it some age to match that rusty patina on the metal screen. And then after getting the sanding dust all blown off and getting into that, especially I want to get that sanding dust, anything that had lodged itself into the screen out by blowing it away with the air compressor. You can use a blow dryer too, but I'm in the workshop, so I have this. And then I want to finish this up with some Varathane finishing wax. Now, a lot of times old windows or pieces like this that have sat outside, they may have a smell. So I'm going to share the door. If you watch the video, I'll link that down where I showed all the haul that Sweet Kelly had given me. There was a door, yes, and that definitely had been outdoors and it had a smell. So when it comes to those smells, let me just share with you, I wanted to paint this, but it definitely had that antique-y, weathered, musty smell. So I did 2 coats of shellac on both sides and made sure that I got it on the edges. If you ever come across a piece where there's a cigarette smoke also, that I have also found that helps seal that in also. Sometimes, yes, it does take more than 2 coats, but I was blessed that it only really took 2 coats. And as you see, I did the 2 coats of Kills Paint and Primer on this, just like I did on that screen, like I do on all my windows. But doesn't that piece fit in perfectly? Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so back to the screen. Now I'm going to remove that tape, and then I'm going to clean off the screen really good. I didn't wash the screen off like I did the window or the frame at first because I didn't want any moisture stopping my tape from sticking to the screen. And I want to share with you, if you can still find some of these magnolia wreaths for $3 at the Target spot, pick them up. I did not grab enough of them because I now have come up with tons of ideas, and this is my last one. And then the welcome from the Dollar Tree. Anytime you can find the general wording in galvanized at the Dollar Tree, yes, so cost efficient and just can make some super cute projects with this. So just removing the tag as I'm like, okay, now how am I going to attach this to the screen? Because hot glue, you would see it, and then how do I touch the hot glue through the screen? And so I'm still just, taking things apart, trying to figure that out. Sometimes you do things and then you're like, now how do I get it to be my vision? So I still am working on this 50-cent roll of black wiring, and when I went and grabbed it, I'm like, oh, it's a perfect fit. It fits through the screen, because I still didn't want to ruin the screen by tearing it. It's a metal, so it will ruin. But I'm like, oh, perfect, God wink moment, it fits. So now I won't be able to see the wire because it's the black, and I should be able to make a little horseshoe shape and then stick it over that the frame of the wire of the magnolia wreath. Of course, I had to measure to make sure I was centered, because nothing like getting something wired in place and like, oh, well, that wasn't centered. And so I'm just, like I said, I'm just making that horseshoe shape and then trying to bend it to go over the wire frame and then just sticking it right through. Now I lifted this up on some little pieces of wood so I wasn't directly onto my table, so I gave it something to push through on. Now I know I need to flip this over in the hopes that these little wire pieces will kind of stay in place. So hopefully I've bent them enough. Now I'll just take my needle nose pliers and give them a little squeeze, a little clamp, and then I didn't want to ruin the screen, so I'm going to hand twist them, and then I will cut off any excess that is too long, but I need it long enough that I could pull it through, and then go ahead and turn any ends that might be towards a wall that might be messing up the wall in towards the wreath. Now for the hanging system on this one, this is very lightweight. It weighs like nothing. So yes, one of these little hanging systems is perfectly fine. Just making sure that I have center so it's not cockeyed on somebody's wall. And then now I'll just hot glue the welcome onto the wreath, just trying to pinpoint where the letters are touching a leaf is the first thing. Yeah, I can't just slap it on there and think that it's going to be touching. I just need to eyeball where the metal and the greenery are touching each other. So next up are these jugs. Now Kelly said that she had just had these primed, but I think they look good as is. I couldn't tell that it was just primer. For what I'm going to do with these, yes, these are just perfect. Already halfway finished. So did you all see my rolling pin makeover where I attached some labels that I printed off of Etsy and some photos? Well, I also had a couple rusty tins that I was given to by a friend, and I had created these labels also. So look, that's what I said, once you downloaded them, you still have them to use. So I didn't have to go back to Etsy. I just had to go back to my downloads and reprint them. And on these ones, I printed it out on a regular copy paper. Yep, that's all it was. Look how beautiful these prints come out. So now I'm taking off the most of the edging here, that white that doesn't print out, and you can size these to what sizes that you wanted. I just kind of guesstimated. I can't say that I really measured my jugs before I went to the house to print these out, but I definitely already love these labels. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to go in kind of like I did on the mirror effect decoupage paper, where I went and distressed the pieces first before putting the label. I want on these pieces of printout, you can tell there's that really jaggedy of edges, so it's kind of made to be distressed, though I can't cut that straight and it'll be a little bit on the thicker side. My mouse sander, my little Black & Decker sander, definitely comes in handy, where I just use the tip, just the edge of it, and just ever so gingerly let it take some of that paper off until the paint job, so I don't see the edge. So I usually like to use my lint rollers to stabilize my round objects so they don't roll, but I'm in the workshop. I really should buy a couple from the Dollar Tree store and keep into the workshop. So I'm just making sure that on these jugs it has the half-gallon or the gallon side wording on the front, so that's where I want to stick my labeling. So pretty simply straightforward here, just Mod Podge, and I'm just going to attach the labels. So for this one, I'm just going to just eyeball what I think is centered. I've got it as centered as best as I can, so it's from side to side. I'm just going to put the layer of Mod Podge on the underneath to start off with. Then after getting it on, I'm going to go around and clean up any edges anywhere where the glue substance has gone onto just the white plain bottle of itself. Now I'm not going to put a layer over it of Mod Podge because I find when I do the layer while the underneath is still wet, it makes more wrinkles, and I want these not to be as wrinkled. So just as whatever you're looking for, if you want it to be more wrinkly, which some projects I do want it to be more wrinkly. But for these, I want them to be a little bit more flatter, so I'm just going to glue the bottom first, let that dry, and then go ahead and I will finish up the front of them. Okay, so I probably could have made the bigger jugs labels a little bit on the wee smaller side, but you know what? We are going to make it work because the copier paper is not so bad to waste, but the printer ink, you all know, is not the funnest thing to have to rebuy. So you know what? I am just going to work with it. So I'm going to go ahead, just like that second one I did, and just put the Mod Podge on the entire bottle right at the beginning. But then when it comes to that top where you know it's not going to be enough, I grab scissors just in case I needed to make a little slice, a little release. But actually once I wet with some Mod Podge just on those edges, I'm able to tap it down very gingerly and actually flatten it out. So still without ruining the label itself, it's working out just fine. I am, God wink moment, like, oh, thank you for not making me have to go back in and print something else out. So yeah, it's just a little bit more underneath, a little bit on top, using my fingers. I am a messy crafter, so I always have something on my fingers anyway. So yeah, so far it's working out. I didn't want it over the entire label, but I guess on the edges is perfect. Somehow this one was even a little bit larger than the other label. I don't know why. So I actually just took the wet wipe and then helped it to flatten a little bit. That wet wipe was wet. And see how it even goes down farther, but I'm making it work and there's not a lot of wording right here. So yeah, no, it worked out perfectly fine. So now I let that dry completely, and I have another step that I want to do. So I want to seal these in, but my polycrylic is going to dry faster than my Mod Podge. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a spray coat. I'm going to go ahead, try to keep it on the paper, but I'll do that same thing where I take that wet wipe and try to wipe off anything that gets on the bottle, because that'll kind of mess up my finishing. Okay, so how many of the regular viewers knew that I was going to go to our go-to of the Waverly Antiquing Wax? And now I grabbed the Varathane Finishing Wax just in case I get any areas too dark that I can tone that down with. So yes, I'm just going to go straight over this bottle just with a rag and then just wipe that on. That's why I said I didn't care that this was just a primer. Because I knew that it would grab on to this Waverly wax, and look, it's already doing it. Just a piece of, I always save my leftover pieces of drop cloth, or a cut up drop cloth is just handy for and cost efficient because I'm always reupholstering something with it, and then that way I'm reusing what I already used. I don't want to just slap it on the label. I want to go in very gingerly, giving it that aged look, because you never know how something is going to absorb in. But since I sealed that in with polycrylic, it doesn't seem to be terribly absorbent in it. You just never know. Sometimes it just grabs right onto it. The edges are definitely grabbing onto it. And then I can tell any area where I got a little bit of the Mod Podge onto the bottle or the polycrylic. And as long as I'm just rubbing hard, that's kind of reactivating. It's not set up and cured yet. This is almost like the same day process that I'm doing all this, so it's not completely cured. So, but I definitely love, just a little bit goes a long way. I don't want it to distract from the label. I just wanted to blend the whole thing in. Oh, this mirror. So how many people look at this mirror seeing beauty and how many see trash? I definitely do not see trash at all. There's just something about aged mirror. And you know, I tried to reproduce an aged mirror in that old window makeover with decoupage paper. But see, it's just so hard to get the real thing. So this is definitely a very raw back. You can see that it's all the way through to some of the glass that you see everything behind. I need to remove the hardware that isn't matching, but nope, I'm not intimidated by this piece at all. I just absolutely see its beauty. So I'm just going to be cutting off that really old wire and then removing both of the hardware systems. One was probably an original that it was probably attached to a frame that was on top of a dresser, and the other had been added later. So let's get this mirror taped off. Now the straight edges, yeah, those are the easy part, but all that detail, not so much easy to get taped off. But a little X-Acto knife to cut around those details will work out perfectly. So that's why I'm going to use my 2-inch tape, just the way that I'm going to have to cut off that excess around those detailed edges. Do you see that beautiful bevel at the top? So this is another one of those situations where I'm not sure if Kelly did it or she bought it this way, but that paint is a little corally for me. I'll take that red, but I'm not sure about this coral. And plus it's half. So, but it's completely sanded. It is smooth. So other than cleaning the frame, that was my prep before painting the piece. And yes, I'm going to just this ready to use black onyx and get this frame painted. Now, after the 2 coats of paint have dried, yes, isn't it already beautiful? So I'm just taking some of this little accent gold paint that I had bought for a previous project. Look, it's just ever so slightly. And yep, I'm just going in with my finger and doing some finger painting. Nothing like being able to touch the detail edges and have a little bit more control with my finger than I probably would a paintbrush. And I'm making sure that I kind of do that same dry technique with my finger where I dab a little bit of that paint off. At first, I'm just taking whatever is in the top and just ever so slightly dusting it onto this detail. Just absolutely love how this is just elevating that detail to another level. Yep, I could have left it black. If I would have distressed it, I would have been bringing that coral through, but I definitely love how this gold is just accentuating it. And then when you look in the mirror itself, there's actually some of that has rubbed off. There's actually goldy in it. So just a perfect coordinating color with the mirror itself. And then the tie-in, the flat side of the frame, I could have just left it as is, but I thought it just needed a little more. So what I'm going to do is that same thing. I'm just going to use my finger. I'm just going to have a wet wipe handy so I can do some blending. So running it across those edges, and then I'll do the inner also. But on the edges, I'll make sure it goes down the entire side of that, because that'll just look weird having something not completed. But yes, just using my finger to do blending and having a wet wipe handy. Now there are some little nails sticking out on the back of this, so we need to remove those before completing this back. So to deal with the glass see-through issues, we actually spray painted the back of the cardboard paper just in flat black, a couple coats, and that way you'll see the black and not see the paper, and we didn't have to actually spray onto the mirror. So the same thing, we're just going to hot glue it on the back of this mirror frame also. and then adding that exact same type of hanging system, but this one can only be hung one way. So here's a Julie design inspired craft. Yep, she already had the accordion hanger all painted. It was actually painted shut, so this is the way that it's going to be. And Chris cut some of the pieces of pallet wood that we have in our stash. And look at those nail holes. They were like perfect for this. Just the right length. So he's just going in. He had cut them down. He had sanded them so they were a little bit more on the smoother side. And now he's just going to be coloring them up with using some Waverly antiquing wax. And to apply it, he's just going to be using a wet wipe because the pallet wood is very dry, and this will help control a little bit that it's not going to be so dry and go really dark on him. So Chris just pre-drilled a little hole and screwed in a little bit of screw to hold these in place. So I know that you all have been waiting to see what am I going to do with this red dresser. And after lots of, oh my gosh, yes, everybody loves this red, and I love the red, and it's really well painted. Other than having to deal with this chip, I don't see any problem. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these two pieces of wood that are on the back. They're probably something that maybe had a mirror back in the day. So just so people are like, hey, where's my mirror at? I'm going to go ahead and remove them. And they are old rusted square nail, or those flathead nails that are never the funnest thing to remove. So if we would have to guess that this was already a crack, that when it was painted, it was painted with the crack just the way you can tell that the stain went inside the crack over time, what have you. Now this little piece of wood does not completely match up. It swelled, probably moisture, what have you. So Chris is going to go ahead and chip away at some of the wood in the inside of this. Though I didn't really get video of Chris gluing this together, he just used a little bit of Titebond and a little bit of Starbond glue because we didn't want to have to paint over any of that, and the Starbond would be there just a little bit in the middle just to hold it, and the Starbond on the outer to make sure that it was clear, and then clamped it and just walked away and let it dry. So as you all probably guessed, I don't really have red in my inventory of paints. So I did order what I thought was close by internet order of this Fusion Cranberry paint, which is perfect for the holiday season, and hopefully it was going to match up, because there's just, even though the outside of this was painted well, there's just those areas that needed touched up, and when the drawers get pushed in, you can see that raw kind of a messy paint. And so I felt as if this was a close enough color. It has those hues of however the paint job was painted on the outside, but at least it'll be a shadow that you won't see this messy paint job, and you won't, when the drawers do get pushed in, you'll see a nice clean line. So it's not an exact match, but for an internet order, I think we did rather well. So now, since I'm not going to be spackling, I don't want to have to sand all this all the way down. We do have in the Starbond line, there is a dark glue. So that is what I'm actually doing to fill in this a little bit more. That way, hopefully that this does not happen again, that gets chipped off and we have it good and attached. So I just have put some of it in. I'm going to put the accelerator. I'm going to have a wet wipe to take any excess off. And this should fill in that crack even a little bit more. It is going to be the perfectly perfect. It's not going to completely make it disappear, but it's going to definitely secure it. And then on the underneath, I did spackle it. Like I said, whatever reason, it wasn't a tight fit, so let that dry, sanded it smooth, and then I am able to use the same cranberry frozen paint to touch up the underneath of it also. Because you know me, I think every piece of my furniture is just as important as what you see every day. So after gluing this corner piece on, I did have to do a little steel wool sanding. Just happens, glue's glue. So I am able to match it up with some Minwax and the dark walnut stain. And what I did is I sanded that piece with the steel wool just lightly because I didn't want to take it all the way down to the bare wood. And then I sanded the rest of the top of the piece with the steel wool. That way there's a few little gouges that are down to the natural wood. And then I'll go over with the stain over the entire rest of the piece, and that'll fill in and hide any of those marks on it. And when I was doing this, I also looked at the body of the dresser also, if there was any little chips of the red paint. As you can see, it was kind of had a stage aging effect on it anyway. So I just took that same rag that I had the stain on it, and anywhere there was down to natural wood, I just touched it with this little bitty of a rag with my fingertip just to make it look like it was a fresh paint job. And then I let that stain dry overnight, and then I proceeded on with 2 coats, and I just chose to spray the polycrylic spray on in 2 coats just for the ease of dry time and making these into quick flips. Now I'm going to work on the 3 drawers just a little bit, and as you see, it has a little bit, I like a cleaner line, so I just went in and taped it off, tried to find the farthest part of where the red paint was. I just wanted to use that same cranberry color just to touch up just the sides to make that crisp line. So to get that little hidden, I am going to be going ahead and doing this. This is that mosaic tile contact paper from the Dollar General store. I thought this was a nice accent. Nope, it's not a perfect match, but it is a accent. Now as I'm working on the drawers, and I always do this afterwards, I like to wax my drawers. And as I was waxing the drawer, because if you wax before you put the contact paper on, your contact paper won't stick. But as I was waxing it to make sure that it was helping that glide in and out properly, because we couldn't find any issues there, I'm like, oh, this one is cracked. So that's where that Starbond glue comes in so handy, because it is such a quick fix. So you put a little bit of the Starbond glue on, and then I'm going to go ahead and spray it. Quickly hold it in place because you have 15 seconds of work time, and then voila, that crack will be good and fixed, and you'll have no problems. Yes, I usually just like to freshen up my drawers just with some of the Varathane finishing wax. I know there's other companies that have other waxes, but this is what I luckily can get locally. Now, when I come to waxing, I try to stay away from the contact paper. I go down just as far as I can, because there again, that will make your sticky not stick anymore. Life lesson learned. When I go back in after waxing a drawer and open it up in our booth, I'm like, oh, my contact paper is no longer stuck. Well, I figured out that was happening. I was getting too much moisture on the bottom of that, and so it was not making it stay down. So an inch or so down from the bottom, it kind of works its way down. I just wanted to share that with you if you've ever had that happen. And then we go ahead and re-Varathane wax the glides that are inside the body of the dresser also. That is just going to help. Like I said, there was no physical problems with this that was stopping it from gliding. It probably just needed some moisture.
Okay, what did you think? I tried, some of them were so easy. They were almost there. So I don't know if Kelly herself did these or she bought them that way. But as soon as I started working on some of these pieces, I'm like, well, it just needs this. It just needs this. It just needs this. And yeah, voila, that was going to be done. And thank you, God wink moment, that God brought Kelly into my life. We're getting ready for an open house. You know, that was really helping to build up stock. When you have something that's a quick flip, yes, thank you so much, Kelly. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and tell me, as always, what item you liked that I flipped today. And yes, thank you so much for being so kind in the comment section towards Kelly's her generosity. Yes, I am just so humbled beyond measure of, yes. And I know that God will bless her 10 times over for her kindness. So thanks for watching today's video, guys. And if this is your first time checking out our channel and you liked this kind of content, hit the subscription button along with that notification bell so you know when we've uploaded a new video. And you'll see it. We will see you next time, guys. And you can see what I'm up to. Bye.